You are ready? I will call to order a regular meeting of the Wellington Board of Selectmen at 6:30. Today is April 19th, 2021. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you will all join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One of these times I am going to say, now bow your head for a moment of silence. I'm programmed from center school. What can I say? All right. Excuse me, I apologize. All right, the next item is approval of minutes. You should have 2 copies of minutes. I apologize. The first is from our last regular meeting, April 5th, and then sent to you via email this morning, early this afternoon, was the special meeting from the 19th. From the 12th. So I would entertain a motion regarding the April 5th regular meeting minutes. Oh, Heather, you may have to unmute
Yeah.
them again.
John, there you go. Okay.
Okay, am I?
Yep,
Yeah.
we
Hear
can
me
hear
now?
you.
Okay, I make a motion to accept the minutes of April 5th as written.
Second,
Motion by John, seconded by Liza. Any discussion? Right, seeing none, I will call for a vote.
Blessington,
Aye.
Boritz,
aye.
Washinsky.
Aye. And our special meeting on April 12th is the next set to be approved.
I would make a motion that we accept the minutes of April 12th as written.
I'll second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will call for a vote.
Blessington,
Aye.
Boritz,
Aye.
Washinsky.
Aye. Motion carries. Before we move on, I would like to make a motion to add an executive session as item 12 regarding the Cadle Rock property.
Second,
Seconded by Liza. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for a vote.
Blessington,
Aye.
Boritz,
aye. We all say aye.
Aye. Thank you. So that will be item 12. We'll do it just after good and welfare. All right, present to speak. If anyone is present to speak, I ask you to state your name for the record and limit yourself to 2 minutes. Is there anyone present to speak? Yes, Ms. Demers.
Hi, my name is Kathy Demers, 48 Mason Road. I understand there's a vacancy on the school board committee and that Ralph Toulis's name has been put forward to fill that vacancy. I'd like to say that I just would like to support that. I've worked with Ralph on various town committees and find him to be very interested in what's going on for the residents and for the town. He comes to meetings well prepared. He keeps abreast of what's going on in town. He follows the Board of Selectmen meeting, Board of Finance Committee meetings. He considers the ideas and opinions of others. He's a good listener. He raises great questions. So I think that he would be a great member on that board.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present to speak? Yes, Ms. Newcomb. You're muted, so you just need to unmute yourself. No, you're still muted. Heather, can you maybe ask her to unmute? It may put a prompt up on her screen.
Is that
There you
okay?
go. Yes, now you're
Okay,
muted.
there we go. Okay. I would like to
Can I
speak
just
in
ask you to
support of-
identify yourself for the
Oh, I'm
record?
sorry, Elaine Newcomb, 28 Fermier Road. I'd like to speak in support of Ralph Poulis's willingness to fill the vacancy on the school building committee. As a lifelong resident of Wellington, his knowledge of the community is hard to surpass, and he would bring acute engineering skills to understand and assess analysis and decisions involved in the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present to speak?
Brenda Abrams, 63 Schofield Road. I would also like to support Ralph and on the committee. I think he would be a great asset to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll move forward to correspondence. The list of correspondence in your packet. And both items I'll address later in this meeting. Any questions? All right, moving on. Selectmen status update. I have nothing new on the steep grant for the Old Town Hall septic. We're still waiting on the contract from Deep. The school building committee is working, reached out to, this is not new from last week, OSTGR, which is the Office of School Construction Grant Review, to answer some questions that the committee had regarding renovation versus new build. We're also working on communication and making sure adequate, proper factual information is being shared with the community, and that everything is completely transparent. So if you go to the town's website under the school building committee, you'll see a link to a page of necessary documents as part of this process. And so the committee has been working on that. The lot SIP grant, this is the project on Route 32 from Hall School to Village Street. Currently, so we're still waiting and working through the next step, waiting for final design and to put out an RFP for that. We had 2 positions in Public Works open. We have hired our assistant transfer station operator who started with us now 2 Saturdays ago. Zig Cassio is our newest assistant transfer station operator. So if you're at the transfer station, give him a wave, say hello. And interviews will be held next week for the labor technician position in Public Works. All right, and Public Works, I see Troy is with us this evening.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All
I
right.
don't need anything.
Oh,
Okay.
go ahead, Troy.
All right. So we started grading dirt roads in town. We have a few more to grade. Sweeping still continuing around town. We did get held up with the weather there on Friday. It did snow. So unfortunately, we were kind of backed up a little bit on that. We helped install a 30 by 45 tent at Center School so the kids can have outdoor learning. We still do the trash at the park. We've been removing some wood along the sides of the roads that Asplin has cut and our tree contractors have cut. Roadside mowing is still going on. And like I said, we plowed snow the other day. So that's about it.
Okay, I know we wanted to take a minute here to discuss an issue that's been, it's come up a couple times now at the transfer station. We currently allow residents to bring in wood ash, cold wood ash, and have disposal for that. We've had now a second incident where residents have brought in hot ash, and in this case, this was still very hot embers, and actually not dumped in the barrels they belong in, but dumped right on the asphalt. So we were fortunate that it didn't catch fire to something else, but the actual ash there actually erupted into a small fire. So we want to remind residents that while we currently accept ash, it cannot be hot. It must be cold ash. And if this continues to be an issue, we may revisit whether or not this is something we accept at the transfer station. So there were actually, and Troy could speak to it, there were actually embers, hot embers, and they were dumped behind the barrels, correct, Troy?
Yeah, behind the barrels, actually in the grass area. And when the attendants were going to leave, they smelt some burning. They happened to walk over there, and there was actually some good-sized embers still burning. So they quickly put it out. But if we can't, it's a safety thing. People are bringing hot ash in their cars or in their vehicles and going down the road with it. So it's kind of,
Right.
you have to watch that.
So we'll have to look at our process to accept them. And if that doesn't solve the issue, then we may look at whether or not we discontinue allowing them at the transfer station. So remind you all, if you bring your wood ash, it must be cold. It cannot still be warm or even, certainly not hot. Anything else, Troy? Okay. Yeah, if you could guarantee it won't snow anymore, we'd be great. I think we'd all be thankful for that. All right, we'll move on to new business. The first item under new business is a senior center van, and our job to approve the vendor. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, so we can have some discussion. I'll move to award the bid from Mobility Works for a new senior center van in the amount of $25,468. Is there a second?
I'm sorry, Erica, my sound cut out for just a second. Can you reread that? for me,
Sure.
please?
My motion is to award the bid for Mobility Works for a new senior center van in the amount of $25,468.
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by John. So this was a CIP project for the seniors, and then they had between the dollars in CIP and in their van fund, they are replacing their two vans with a new van, and you have the current quote in front of you from Mobility Works. Mobility Works is a state-approved vendor, which is why you see just the one in front of you. And so your packet includes photos. And hopefully with this purchase, it certainly will make the vehicle a little bit more reliable, and we'll be getting to a point where we'll be able to see our seniors come back together and actually utilize this van.
I just had one question on it. This is going to belong to the town, right?
That is correct.
So why are we paying a sales tax on it?
Heather, do you have that file that they brought us this morning? The red file that, thank you. Let me take a look at, this was the quote, John, let me take a look at the final contract that's come by for us to approve if we award the quote. Right, so the final does not include sales tax. So I will amend my motion to award the contract for $22,497.01.
Second.
All right.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, I will call for a vote.
Blessington,
Aye.
Moritz,
Aye.
Waschinsky.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, next item is to approve the field maintenance contract. You'll see the three bids we received. The bids for field maintenance for July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2023 came in, and we opened those. That was last week, Troy. Recall the date?
I believe it was on Tuesday, so.
Tuesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday, yeah.
One of the,
I
it
think
was
it
not
was
a
the
snowy
15th.
day that
It was the
I remember. So the opening, we actually held out front, and the only people in attendance were myself, Troy, and Bethany. And so we received 3 quotes, one from Greg Peck, one from Chris Varga of Varga Landscape, and a third from David Roy at Roy's Landscape Design LLC. And so you have the 3 quotes in front of you. Want me to read them all into the record? We did, Troy has shared with us his recommendation to award the bid to Roy's Landscape. Can I ask Bethany and or Troy, if you have any comments? Do the bids all fulfill the required needs?
They did. The only one that I would say is with Roy's is currently Greg Peck fertilizes once a year, and that's it. And Roy's put down what a normal application would be between 3 and 4 times a year, lime fertilizer, as long as the town would provide the fertilizer or the lime. So that's the only reason there was a difference in price. I know we've had a few issues with Greg with weed whacking and blowing the grass around in the fields, waiting too long to do it. So that's why I would recommend Roy's Landscaping. He did say that he would fertilize for that price, and try to get the fields back, back up to standards instead of just once a year fertilize.
And if I look at these, except for that, his prices were lower than Greg Peck's on all the individual
Yep, all on the individual.
mowings.
Yep, except the fertilization.
And if I read this correctly, Chris Varga's bid request does not include license information. So he does not currently hold a contractor's license, while the other 2 do.
I mean,
Bethany?
so, yeah, if I could speak. So although I'm new, from what I've been told from Troy and from the previous director, I'd like to recommend that we use Roy's Landscape for the new field maintenance contract. It seems that they're only actually about $90 higher than Greg, and they are offering much more with lawn care and treating our athletic fields for the future, trying to keep them green and growing.
And I know although Greg Peck has held the contract in the past, there have been some concerns, and there were, Bethany, with your predecessor as well. All right. I will make a motion to award. I'm sorry, I'm just going to do the quick math here. To award the landscape field maintenance contract from July 1st, 2021 through June 30, 2023 to David C. Roy of Roy's Landscape in the total amount of $27,955.
Second.
There's a second. Is there a discussion?
That was,
And so if you add up, there's not a total column, John. There's a total for column 1 and a total for column 2.
okay.
Sorry, just double checking my math over here. All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll call for a vote.
Lessington,
Aye.
Moritz,
Aye.
Krasinski.
Aye. Motion carries. The next item is to award the contract for tree removal services. This also is a 2-year bid from July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2023. This bid opening was the same day as the field maintenance. And we had just one contract bid, and that was from Linden Tree Service. You can see the hourly rate at $175. and a daily rate for an 8-hour day and for a 9-hour day. So I will make a motion to award the tree removal service 2-year bid to Linden Tree Service from July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2023.
Second,
Discussion?
how does this, I mean, I know we've used them in the past. How does this compare? Are they increasing their rates at all, or is this fairly level with what we've been paying?
They went up $25 from the last 2 years per hour.
It was $150 per hour on their hourly rate for the current contract. And Troy, you've been happy with their service. Do you have any issues with their service?
No, absolutely not. I haven't had an issue with him. I would highly recommend him. I mean, he's there all the time when we need him. He was there when the storms were there. He's a very efficient person. I've never had a problem. Nobody's complained about anything. I really highly recommend it.
Excuse me. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call for a vote.
Blessington,
Aye.
Baritz,
Aye.
Waschinsky.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item is appointment on the school building committee. Nancy Bailey, who was a former member, resigned from the committee. So I want to first thank Nancy for her service, albeit short. Every amount of input is important. And we've had one name come forward, and that's that of Ralph Toulis. So I will make a motion to appoint Ralph Toulis as a regular member representative of the school building committee effective April 20th, 2021, expiring once the charge of the committee has completed. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by John. Any discussion?
Just anything I was going to say was said by the people present to speak today. I think Ralph is a very good addition.
All right. Seeing no other discussion, I will call for a vote.
Blessington,
Aye.
Baritz,
Aye.
Waschinsky.
Aye. All right, thank you. Mr. Toulis, I see, is on with us, so I thank him for his willingness to serve. And you'll just need to be sworn in before the next meeting, which is slated for May 5th, because this week's meeting was canceled. Okay, so moving on, I have one tax refund. I will move to refund $275.93 to Sarah E. Murray on a certificate of correction.
Second,
Seconded by Liza. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, I will call for a vote.
Blessington,
Aye.
Baritz,
aye.
Waschinsky.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, next item is 2021-2022 budget update. I really hope that I could come to you today and said we had all the information we needed on the guidelines of how to use the ARP, but sadly, nothing has changed there. We did vote to kind of halt the process where we left off and pick up once we have that guidance. So we will continue. I will keep you updated as soon as I know. You will all know. They're starting to, OPM has reached out and started to direct municipalities to make sure they had all of the necessary financial setups and the requirements met in order to receive the money. So we're definitely starting to move in a forward direction. So again, May 11th is the 60-day deadline to receive the money. I hope before that we have the guidelines on how to use the dollars. Any questions or discussion from y'all? Okay. So we'll move on to COVID-19 update. As of today, Willington has had an increase of 14 cases since our last meeting on April 5th. So our cumulative total is 242 COVID positives. This goes back to last March. And currently we have 21 probable cases. And we have been fortunate that we haven't lost any more residents to COVID-19 related illnesses. as of last Thursday. Thursday is when the updates are done on a 2-week case. And so there, we were last time we met, we were in the yellow. So we were doing really good. We had seen quite a drop. We bumped up. We had a slight uptick to 13.3 cases per 100,000 in the 2 weeks reported. So we're now in the orange level. Most towns had an uptick as well. However slight it is. So I'll remind organizations, families, and individuals to continue to be vigilant, practice those COVID precautions, wear your mask, wash your hands, and just again, be vigilant as we think beyond ourselves during this. No change on vaccine since our last meeting. Everyone 16 years of age and older are still eligible. If anyone is having trouble finding an appointment, I encourage them to reach out to our Human Services Department. We are still collecting names and sharing vaccine availability right now. And this seems to be a little bit across the board in the state. We're seeing a little less demand to meet the supply we have. So we're seeing some COVID vaccine clinics with more openings than previously reported. Today, I did share some information that UConn at the Holly Armory on UConn campus and stores had several openings and a way for folks to sign up for vaccines there. If there is not enough demand, it's very likely that those clinics would shut down in this part of the state. And so we aren't currently a town that's being targeted in a demographic sense where we're seeing that FEMA mobile van go out and come into our community. It's not to say that they won't, but without that, having local clinics nearby accessible, I think is important for those residents who want to get vaccines. So I encourage folks who are 16 and over to consider being vaccinated. I will tell you, I had my first vaccine now almost 4 weeks ago, and this week I'll receive my second vaccine. It's certainly not required. It's not mandated, but I encourage everyone to consider receiving the vaccine. And if you need help making an appointment, VAMS is not your only way to make an appointment. There are many others, and we're here to help if needed. The last vaccine data reported shows Willington at 45.4% of our total population vaccinated, and that's 2,662 residents. That was of the 14th of April. I don't have a breakdown of specific age groups. If you recall, I have reported to you 65 to 74 population breakdown and 75 and over. And while I still have some of that information, I will tell you it's largely skewed simply because I believe right now we have 130% of our 65 to 74 population vaccinated. So I did reach out to the health district, and basically we believe it's a census issue. They're working off of the 2010 census because the federal government has not updated with the most recent census information. We're really basing that on old numbers. So more than 100% of our 65 and over population is vaccinated. So it's really the other 50% is our younger population, younger than 65, I should say. So I'll share data as we get it. So if you're looking on the state site for vaccine data and you see those numbers, that's why we have more than 100%. We just believe the base number they're using is outdated, but it is the most current. The current emergency declaration has been extended to May 20th. I did receive information late on Friday that we should be looking for an extension of the in-person and hybrid meetings to be able to move forward in that fashion, but there is no there's no executive order, extension of an executive order pending that would change any vote that has to be by town meeting. So you recall in the past, there had been specific items that said you did not need to go to town meeting. Boards of selectmen could make those changes. And we just did one last week. That was by an executive order. The information I received was that there's no further executive order that would take any of those powers away. So any of those decisions typically made in our case at a town meeting will still need to be made in town meeting, which I think is good news. We're moving in the right direction of being able to come together in different ways to make the decisions as a town via our town meeting. And again, I have no new information on the American Rescue Funds other than what I've shared with you already. We did send out on our website in an e-blast, and the Selectmen, you should have both received the municipal operations guide. So kind of a snapshot into how things are running with different town services under COVID. I am looking towards beginning to mid-June to a full reopen here. We still have a few more changes to make in the TOB to ensure health safety of not just our residents, but our staff. And so as soon as we've got a specific date, we will put that out to folks. Again, we're still, our doors are locked, but we are seeing folks by appointment. And if you don't have an appointment and you come in, we will see you as soon as we're able to. So it may mean that you have to wait for someone who had a current appointment, but we have not turned anyone away for any service here in the town office building. Any questions? Comments? Updates? All right. I will move right along to the discussion, transfer station fee. Troy had brought to us at our last meeting discussion about propane tank recycling and what we charge. So you both should have information that Troy had in, this was information he had in his office in as far as records for recycling. So it looks like last February in 2020, you can see how many tanks were picked up in good condition and what revenue that brought in, how much was brought in, or how much we lost in revenue in tanks. The number 20 tanks, and those are tanks that we receive funding for. We do not get anything back ever. Is that correct, Troy? For the 30 and 40, number 30 and number 40 tanks. So again, this is only a little over a year snapshot, and you can see the one pickup, we had a total credit of $156. This January, we had a total credit of $114. And in March, they just came and picked up a smaller number of tanks, and we got a $4 credit. So in the breakdown, you can see at the proposed charge, Troy has shared with you what additional revenue we could have brought in. So I think at this point, what we have to decide is this something we want to keep at the current the current methods we're using, where we're really just a pass-through, or do we want it to be a source of potential revenue?
I feel like at this point, this isn't going to be a huge revenue generator no matter what we do. And I don't see this as being an avenue for revenue generation. If it's not costing the town anything, and in fact, we're getting a little bit of a credit back, unless there's something that we're not able to do because we need an extra $1,000, then I would suggest leaving the price as is. I'm not sure this is the time that we need to be adding additional costs, however nominal they seem, to the residents.
I agree. And again, Troy and I discussed that we're only looking at a year snapshot. And so if we can, the information wasn't available in his office records kept prior, but if we come across some information that shows that these positives were anomalies and we're losing money prior to that, then we revisit the issue. But I'm not sure that this is the time to add This is a source, an additional source of revenue. It's not a lot, but we did make a couple bucks, and we weren't set in taking them to make dollars. So it just worked out that way. If the town was continuing losing revenue, I think we'd want to take a look at passing that cost along. But at this point, I'm not sure it's necessary. But if it becomes an issue, I'd like us to revisit, especially if the number of small tanks or the number of large tanks that we get no funding for ever outweighs the smaller tanks that we do. John, you're muted, but I see you shaking your head in agreement. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you on that. So
All right, so that moves us to discussion of the treasurer position. Brought this matter to you at our last meeting, as our current treasurer is not seeking re-election, and we know in the past this has been an issue. Lori did share with us some information that she wanted you to see based on her overview of the job. And you both should have that in your packet. Lori is with us. Lori, would you like to speak to this?
Yes,
Okay.
I won't read this entire thing to you, but I'll just kind of summarize. I've been the treasurer for over a year. I feel qualified to speak whether the treasurer's position should be elected by the voters or selected by the selectmen as a hired position. It's always been elected, but with a few people looking for part-time position with no benefits, the change in duties over the years, the level of expertise required, and the lack of accountability, it's time to change the treasurer to a hired position. And I created a chart that shows, obviously, the pros of having a resident are that, you know, you have someone who lives in town and who's more likely to be vested in the town. But I think those are the only pros to having the treasurer in elected position. We've had trouble filling the position. Accountability is almost non-existent. Short of embezzlement, it's unlikely that there are any consequences if the treasurer is not doing the job. And I know that over past years, we've had people who either didn't want to really do the work or didn't want to do part of the work or weren't qualified to do the work. And so other people in the finance office had to kind of take over that. And it's not fair to them. They are all working full time and they work very hard. And it's just, I don't think it makes an efficient office when you have a treasurer who says, well, I'm not going to do that. Or, you know, it just seems that in modern days, you need to have the position be accountable either to the first select woman or to the business manager, however you want to structure it. But I mean, you know, obviously I've tried to be conscientious. I've enjoyed the job. I think I've helped the office, but there is no job requirement to run for elected position. And it's been very difficult to find people. I mean, I'm a retired teacher. I had no intention of working after I retired, but the town couldn't find a treasurer. And I thought that, you know, I would step up and help. And I'm glad I was able to. And it's been a great job for me during the pandemic because I think I would have gone stir crazy without doing all that work. But I've also included the 4-page checklist of all the duties of the treasurer. I won't go through that with you, but you have it there. And I continue to add to this as things come up, like the stripe payments that, you know, people pay for the building department. I have to find the list of stripe payouts and payments. I have to print the receipts and I have to then enter them into an Excel, and then I have to enter them into the software. This is just for a payment that somebody makes for building permits. You know, there are so many different little parts to this job. It is probably 25 to 30 hours a week. And I just really feel that it's time that we hire someone who, could have the background. Again, I think I've done a decent job. I think if you ask anybody in the finance department, I'm in there most days and I'm working hard, but there's no requirement for an elected person to really do anything specific, and they're not accountable to someone. I think it needs to be a hired position.
Thank you.
If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
John or Liza? And you also received the information that CCM had gotten back to us. John, go ahead.
Yes, we received the information. The main reason we have a treasurer is because that position is required by state law. And there are certain items that are required by the statutes, that there are certain items which the treasurer must perform. They must sign this off on this or that. Otherwise, once upon a time, many, many years ago, I believe the treasurer was the chief financial officer of the town. And at that point, we established the position, which is now, I think we call the business manager, which is basically the chief financial officer of the town. And the treasurer just kind of was left on the wayside. I'm not even sure why we need to have a treasurer except for the state law. We could hire people to do what this is being done, and the chief financial officer could handle that job. If the chief financial officer needs people to do some of these things, well, maybe we need to expand the office. Treasurer is kind of a position that, well, as Lori said, if currently the treasurer is invested in the town. We have, and if we start hiring whoever we want, I'm afraid we're going to start getting career bureaucrats in who are more interested in finding a stepping stone from a small town like us, who probably are not going to pay what a city of 50,000 people would pay, and use this to get to that 50,000 city. I know we have to find people, and it's kind of hard to do so, but I think we probably still could. And I don't, I still would like to see it remain an elected position.
So
John,
Liza?
I'm sorry, I just was going to try to answer that if I may.
Can we hear from Liza and then I'll have you?
Yeah.
Lori, go ahead. Liza.
wait, me? Okay. So yeah, I think in looking at this list, and I'm going through it and I'm seeing it, how much like detailed work there is, and how it's really the work of somebody that you would, an accountant, right? Or a bookkeeper or something along those lines. When I think of a treasurer, especially for any union or large organization that I've been a part of, that's a voluntary, on a voluntary basis, or elected positions or whatever, a treasurer sort of is the accountability in overseeing the work of what the staff does, right? And advocates for the town, but doesn't do all the bookkeeping. That's the piece that I find, like, I'm not exactly, and John, sounds like you have some of that history of how it transitioned from the treasurer kind of monitoring and managing the overall picture versus doing all of these essential tasks, which I agree. I don't know how we have found people to dedicate 30 hours a week for a volunteer, basically, a volunteer position that's not giving you benefits, that's not paying you enough to, pay your mortgage. Like, I don't know how we found people to do that for so long. So I think there's some conversation to be had about reassessing what our treasurer's responsibilities actually are, if it's to remain an elected position, and then getting down to this list, this very long list of tasks that the current treasurer is being held responsible to do, and figure out where those tasks actually belong. And if that means more staffing, that means more staffing.
Lori? You want to respond?
Yeah, I think the times have changed. I think if you had a treasurer who was responsible for overseeing this, how would you have somebody who even knew what all these things were? I mean, without a bookkeeping or accounting background, again, I've been treasurer of multiple organizations, and I'm currently treasurer of at least one other organization. And I've done that kind of job, as Liza was saying, for several groups throughout my life. And I do have math background and all of that, but there really was a lot to this job. And I don't see how you can even have somebody in a supervisory position, because how would they know the software? How would they know the individual pieces of contacting the state and all the requirements for the different grants? And, basically the treasurer is responsible for all the revenue. And I feel like at a year in the position, I'm just starting to piece things together and figure them out. And I've had great help from people in the office, and you have a great finance office, but those people are working full 40 hours a week. And when they have to help and they have to cover things that aren't being done, then we're having to pay them extra, or we're having to expect them to work more than 40 hours a week. And I don't think they get paid enough to be working 50 hours a week. And I just don't see how an elected person would have enough knowledge to even understand what to oversee in this job, or to even know whether it's being done correctly. I think the way the finance office is set up now, there's a great division of jobs, so that one person isn't doing all of everything. I don't actually handle the physical deposits, and that's a way that we've divided up, so that they're not one person is doing a chain of everything. But I just don't see how an elected person would know. We have two people in the office who formerly served as treasurers, and so they're a great resource. But 20 years down the road, when those people are gone, I'm not sure you're going to have people who've served as treasurer. And I think you need to have someone who has a background and who's hired to do those jobs. So that's my 2 cents.
So I see this a little bit twofold. If you look at some of the information we got, and I have the town of Essex information in front of me. They have the position as accountant / assistant to the finance director. And so there's a clear variety of responsible duties that person does. And a lot of those are what our treasurer is currently doing. And then they have a treasurer who's elected. And this individual, who is a hired employee, is supervised by the finance director, but also provides necessary information to their board of finance and the treasurer as necessary. So I think what we might want to be looking at is the work, the bulk of the work being done by a hired individual, an appointed or a staff member. And then there is some oversight into the work that does need to be done. It is an incredible undertaking every time there's a change in this staff to our current finance department, who there's 3 people doing 3 very individual jobs and almost no ability to overlap because of the amount of work in that office. And having to then stop and train a new treasurer who comes in is with no skill, because again, Lori had some skills and some knowledge, but this was not what Lori does. This was not her background. And the requirement, quite frankly, for a treasurer and the amount of work we're asking to be done currently is to be a registered voter in the town of who resides in the town of Willington. And there is no oversight. If Lori came in 1 hour a month, there's not much we could do about it, but there would still be work that needed to be done, and it would fall to someone. We need to make sure there are dollars in the bank to be able to pay the expenditures that our finance office is doing. So I'd like us to investigate, not necessarily changing that whole role of treasurer, but the majority of it. And so we could still have an elected treasurer who is responsible for those things. But the bulk of the work is being done by a staff member. There are benefits that would then go with that job. That is, something that's not afforded to someone. I don't think I could ever comfortably say to someone, it's an elected position, it's 15, maybe 20 hours a week, because that's just not the case. That is very misleading to someone, and we know how much more work it is. It's a very different world. I'd like us to investigate, moving in a different direction. John, I know how strongly you feel about jobs here in the town office building going to Willington residents. But it's certainly not very inviting to take a $30,000 job with no benefits. And then for someone, and then for the town's perspective to that, we have no say over who's elected. Who the people elect is who the people elect. And they may or may not have the ability to do the job. And that it's cause for concern at some point. And it's not a job that there have been people leaping at to take. It's not serving on a board or commission for an hour a month. And there's a lot of work to be done. In my time here, I have yet to see a treasurer who's here less than probably 30 hours a week on average.
Again, I think we're sort of beating around the same bush here. The treasurer, again, once was the chief financial officer. And then we hired somebody else to take that position, and the treasurer just kind of hung on. The person who we hire is, if I'm not mistaken, the highest paid employee of the town outside of the education side of the house. And
Who, you mean the treasurer?
no, the chief financial officer. And so I think they should be running, that's what they were brought into. They should be running the whole town. The treasurer maybe is doing more than they should right now. Maybe we're overpaying them. Maybe we should shift more, maybe hire another person and have the treasurer be more or less just in accordance with the state law that says we have to have a treasurer.
Yeah, and I agree with you, John. A change like this would make our current business manager oversee the person doing that work, the bookkeeping and accounting work, and it would mean hiring someone, paying them, and then in my opinion, a much smaller stipend for a treasurer, because they wouldn't be here all those hours a week. And I think that's a change. That's a necessary change. I am not sure I would say that we should make the treasurer be the CFO. If we had more staff in our office, maybe, but quite frankly, that's more work than our current finance office could handle. That's for sure. But yeah, so, I see two people breaking it off into two pieces, lowering maybe that stipend for a treasurer and hiring someone. And it would mean more dollars than what we're currently putting out, because there would be benefits associated with what I believe the number of hours would be necessary. And then that individual could assume other tasks as needed, right? So if you take a look at, and again, I'm just looking at the Essex job description that's in there, there are a variety of tasks that person is able to do with. It would allow for more coverage around the office, in our finance office, and it will allow for that accountability. They are accountable to someone now, and mainly the finance manager. So, would we like to pursue that avenue? Again, a change like this, I'm not sure it would take an ordinance if we're not changing the treasurer position. If we are, so we would still have a treasurer and still have an elected treasurer, but the responsibilities would then, there wouldn't be as many day-to-day responsibilities on that. And so I have reached out and waiting to hear back from someone in Essex to really get a sense of what that job looks like within their finance office. Again, is that something, you're both interested in us pursuing and taking a look at,
It is for me, yeah.
John?
Yeah.
And that allows us to keep that treasurer position, that person who's ultimately accountable for the revenue side, still a resident, someone who's still invested in our community, which I think is important. But the accounting, work piece of it and the day-to-day work would then fall to an accountable employee.
That makes sense to me. And again, I think, having a treasurer as an elected position, I think the intent is to be another level of checks and balances, and sort of like what John was saying. I mean, not that, I don't know, Willington, and we've talked about this before with previous discussions of salary and all of that and hiring. Willington is always going to be a stepping stone town because of our pay. We're always going to be getting entry level, or, those who don't necessarily need this to be the sole breadwinner position in their house or whatever. So, I mean, we're always going to be that unless we increase our salaries. And I think the elected position, lightening up the load and the responsibilities, helps bring that back to more of a checks and balances, to avoid, like what John was concerned about, just a bureaucrat getting in there and without investment in the town and not being, held accountable for way that they're spending or accounting. The treasurer is there to be the eyes of the town and the townspeople. And I think that makes more sense than what we're currently doing.
All right, so I will keep this on the future agenda and bring you back more information so we can continue this discussion. All right, I thank you. That brings us to present to speak. If there is anyone on the call who would like to speak, I ask you to identify yourself for the record and limit yourself to 2 minutes. Going once, going twice.
How about Ralph Tillis?
Yes, Mr. Tulis.
How is everyone
We're
tonight?
good. How are you?
I'm good. I want to thank the board for my appointment. I hope that I can contribute in a manner that's in the best interest of the town. And I appreciate the support that I've seen tonight for this position. I guess swearing in via phone is still okay.
Reach out to Robin. I'm not sure how she's handling that. I won't speak for her, but if you give
Well,
her a
I was
call-
just asking you because she did swear me in on the phone.
Oh, then yeah.
So we're good to go.
Swore you in tonight after our meeting?
Or during your meeting.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all I had to say.
Anyone
That's efficiency for you.
You had some time. There's not a meeting for a couple of weeks, but I like it. All right. Anyone else present to speak? All right. No, at any time you can reach out to the Selectman's office by phone or email if you make an appointment. We will be happy to hear from you. All right. Good and welfare. I have a March report from, did I read this last month? I guess not. March report from Troop C. We had a total of 317 calls for service, 12 accidents, 13 criminal investigations, 2 burglaries, 0 larcenies, and 252 non-reportable matters for a total of 7 arrests. Motor vehicle enforcement, there were 29 total traffic stops, including 2 on-site DUIs, 0 arrests, 3 misdemeanor summons, 7 infractions, 2 written warnings, and 18 verbal warnings. All right, so I thank them for continuing to keep us up to date. You may have noticed the roaming speed radar signs about town. They're currently on roads, and they may be turned in different directions to kind of get us a sense of each direction. I can tell you nothing new to us. Speeding is absolutely a problem in our town, and I will tell you it is not just our town. I had a meeting of the Eastern Highlands Health District Board and reported by another town similar instances of speeding. Some similar speeds we're seeing on our 25-mile-an-hour roads, upwards of 60 miles an hour, and in their case 70 miles an hour. We did have a report of was it 67, Troy? 67 miles an hour on Glass Factory Road at 2:30 in the afternoon. So this is becoming a big issue. And so we're compiling that data to kind of see if there are particular spots, particular times. But I'm asking, residents to be mindful of the speed, mindful that we do have many backcountry roads that do not have sidewalks. You see our residents jogging or walking with their families and their pets on the road, and to slow down. And so we'll be sharing that information with you, but watch out. We are paying attention to the speeds. They're not just there to help you speed down during that time. We are compiling the data. And one could ask whether or not this is something we'd want to consider a public health emergency, because it certainly is an issue. Connecticut Water is looking for a representative from Willington for the Water System Advisory Committee. It was a group established in 2014 under an agreement with the town of Mansfield when they were selected to provide long-term water supply for the university and Mansfield community. The committee includes representatives from Mansfield, Yukon, and adjacent municipalities, regional planning agencies, and other stakeholders. They meet quarterly. Members have been valuable in providing local input and ensuring communication and collaboration relating to the water system improvements, local planning, economic development, water and land conservation, and environmental stewardship. It's a 2-year term. If anyone is interested, you can reach out to this office, and we will move forward from there. As always, you can find up-to-date COVID-19 information at ct.gov/coronavirus. All of the facts and figures I give you and the data I share on vaccines and positive cases are on that website, as well as up-to-date information on executive orders, statements from the governor's office, and reopen plans. Our mobile food share will be here at the town office building on Wednesday, the 28th of April, from 11 to 11:30, and that's open to any and all. If you have any questions, you can contact our human services. In addition, this Friday, the 23rd, there'll be a food distribution of dry goods, and then the farmers for families food boxes. And those are in conjunction with the Mansfield Lions. So we thank them for offering that to our residents. There are no qualifications or residency requirement for either of these programs. And the food distribution for the farmers to families, food boxes, I should say. The food distribution for dry goods is for Willington residents only, and that's Friday, 4/23 from noon to 1:30. If you can, please support all of our local businesses and restaurants. I ask, again, families, organizations, and individuals to continue to be vigilant with COVID-19 precautions and to think beyond ourselves. John or Liza, do you have anything for good and welfare? All right. I do hope our public school staff, kids too, are enjoying a much earned spring break. So getting a little bit of time away from their screens for a bit.
Ralph,
But are they? But are they? They're just watching different things.
They might be. Things they couldn't normally offer. All right.
Erica, might I add something to good and welfare?
We don't normally, but go ahead, Ralph.
It just has to do with the condos on Baxter Road. The first building hopefully will be set back down on its new foundation next week.
That's exciting news.
And we move on to the next one.
Yeah, so that was the first condominium in Connecticut with a crumbling foundation to be raised and the foundation replaced. it was quite a sight to see. I will quote Mr. Tulis, it was a little bit like watching grass grow, but it was probably the most exciting grass we've ever seen grown. It went very slowly, but to watch that process was exciting, and you could feel the excitement and a little bit of relief for the residents who lived in those condominiums. With that, I will make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss pending and political potential, not political, sorry, litigation, and to protect the town's collective rights and interests relating to the lots that comprise and are known as the Cadle Rock properties in both towns of Willington and Ashford pursuant to 1-210B4, and invite Heather Sharpley and Janice Clausen. Is there a second? Seconded by John. Did we lose Liza? All right, it was seconded by John. All those in favor? Aye. All right, so unless you are a member of the board or were specifically invited in, we will ask you, oh, Liza's coming back, to leave the meeting. If not, we will have to, put you into a waiting room. You could come back when we're done with our executive session if you so choose to wait. Liza, I apologize, we voted without you.
No, that's fine. I meant to click the unmute button. I accidentally hit the leave button because I'm really tired today.
It was red and inviting, so she.
It was. It really was. I'm sure it was not.
Recording. All right, so it is 7:42. We have left executive session, and I will make a motion. I move the following resolution. Whereas the town of Willington is owed $91,430.29 by Cadle Rock Properties Joint Venture LP for properties identified as Willington Assessor's Map Number 6, lots 11 and 11A. Whereas on or about January 4th, 2012, the tax collectors in the towns of Ashford and Willington initiated a tax sale pursuant to Section 12-157 of the Connecticut General Statutes and proceeded to auction the properties. Whereas the tax sale auction date was adjourned by each of the tax collectors, and whereas the towns are working together and now seek to reinstate the tax sale for the sale of these properties, and each town now seeks to acquire the properties in each of the towns if there is not full redemption by the owners or full payment on all taxes due by a third party. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that the auction date for the tax sale now proceed, and that the tax collector do all things necessary, including retaining an attorney to continue with the tax sale auction and notifying the delinquent taxpayer, each mortgagee, lien holders, and other encumbrancer of record. And resolved that the Willington tax collector is directed and authorized pursuant to Section 12-157C of the General Statutes to acquire and take title to these properties on behalf of and in the name of the town if there is no bidder or if no bid equals the amount of the full taxes due plus the cost of the tax sale to the town. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Liza. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, Heather, I will call for a vote.
Blessington,
Aye.
Moritz,
Aye.
Washinsky.
Aye. Motion carries. I thank you much. I know they're having a similar discussion on this topic and potential resolution in Ashford. So we look to see what their outcome is. They are meeting currently as we are. So thank you for all your work on this, Janice. And seeing no other business on the agenda, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I'll second. This is a non-debatable matter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I thank you all. I bid you
Have a great night, everyone.
have a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Sleep tight. Where I'm going.
Ah, I